Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Mr. Cobalt, and in this video I'm going to continue going over examples of different molecules and ions, showing you how you can get the Lewis dot structure from those molecules and formulas using the steps that I showed in a previous video. So the first two are already done. Let's go ahead and do C, ammonium. So again, the first step is always to count the total number of valence electrons. And notice that we have a charge here, so we have to take the charge in consideration when we're figuring out the total number of valence electrons. And so we start with nitrogen. Nitrogen is in group 5, so that's going to have 5 valence electrons. So it's going to have 5 valence electrons. We have 4 hydrogens. Each hydrogen is going to have 1 valence electron because hydrogen is in group 1. So that's going to be 4. So we're going to have plus 4 for the hydrogens. And then notice we have that plus sign. The plus sign is basically we have a charge, and the reason we have a charge is because we have less valence electrons than we should have. What we should have is 5 plus 4. Since we have a plus charge, then an electron was lost some way, somewhere. So we need to take that in consideration. And so here, the plus charge is going to tell us we're going to remove an electron from the total here. And so since this is a plus 1, we're going to remove 1 electron. So we move 1 electron, and so that's going to equal 8 total valence electrons. So that's the total number of valence electrons that we have to work with to put our molecule together. Okay, so now we put it together again. Our central atom is going to be nitrogen. It's the first atom written in the formula. It's also the only atom that's going to make multiple bonds. So if you draw out the Lewis dot structure, Lewis dot symbol for each element, you'll see that nitrogen has 3 unpaired electrons and hydrogen only has 1. So that means that hydrogen only bonds once. Hydrogen's only ever going to bond once. So it doesn't make for a good central atom. So we're going to have nitrogen as our central atom, and the 4 hydrogens are going to be bonded to the nitrogen. Okay, so there's my skeletal structure. So that's step 2, my skeletal structure. And I need to subtract from the skeletal structure the number of electrons I used to bond. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8. 2 electrons for each bond. So I have 4 bonds, and therefore 4 times 2 is 8. So I used up 8 electrons to make my skeletal structure. And you'll notice that I have no more electrons left over. So at this point, I can't put electrons on my outer atoms. I can't go to step 3. And I don't need to use step 3 because all of my outer atoms are hydrogen and they're already bonded once. And so they're happy with their duet. And then the next step would be if I had electrons left over, I would put them on the central atom. But I don't have any left over. And so now if I check, I'll see that everyone is happy with a duet or an octet. So nitrogen is sharing 2 electrons with its hydrogens. So it has 2, 4, 6, 8. So nitrogen is happy with an octet. And each hydrogen is bonded, sharing 2 electrons. So they're happy with their duet. So this is a good Lewis structure. So the only thing that we're missing now is the charge. So if we put a charge here, so we would just write it with, if I move this over, so get rid of that. We'll put a charge here, a plus, and so there's our Lewis dot structure. The NH4 with a plus charge. Okay. The next example would be, so we did C. D, ClO minus. So ClO minus is our hypochlorite. Hypochlorite is a polyatomic ion, and once again it has a charge. And so again, the first step is to get the total number of valence electrons. So chlorine is in group 7, so it has 7 valence electrons. So 7 valence electrons for chlorine. Oxygen is in group 6, so therefore it has 6 valence electrons. And we only have one each, so it's going to be plus 6. And then we have this charge here that we have to take care of. So it's a -1 charge. So we've seen with regard to -1 charges, that means that we have one more electron than we normally would have. That would balance the charge. So the negative charge is telling us that we have to add one more electron. We have to account for that negative charge, and we account for it by adding an electron to match the charge. Since this is a -1, we're going to add one more electron. So this would be +1, and that gives us 14 valence electrons. So that's what we have to work with to create our Lewis dot structure. So since we only have 2 atoms here, they're just going to be bonded to each other. So the central atom, there really is no central atom in this case. So we're going to ClO bonded like that. Okay, so again, our skeletal structure is just one bond. We're going to just start with one bond. One bond between CO and another bond between oxygen. So in this case, oxygen would technically be our central atom, because first it's got more unpaired electrons in its Lewis dot symbol, right? This only has 1 electron in its Lewis dot symbol. This has 2 unpaired electrons in its Lewis dot symbol. So oxygen would be considered, in this case, you would consider it the central atom. So now we have our skeletal structure. We used 2 electrons to create this single bond between them. So we're going to have to remove, let me erase this and put it down here, ClO. And we're going to use that 2 electrons. So we're going to subtract the 2 electrons from our total. So we have 12 electrons left. So what we're going to do is we're going to put lone pairs on our outer atom to give it an octet. So we have 1 bond already, that's 2. And chlorine, we could put 3 more. Lone pairs. So each lone pair is 2 plus the bonding 2. So we have 8 total electrons. So that's good. We gave chlorine an octet. So we're gonna have to subtract out the 6 electrons we used for the lone pairs. And so that's going to be 6 electrons left over. Now we're going to put lone pairs on our central atom to give that an octet. So we're going to do 1, 2, and 3. And we happen to have 6 electrons left over. So that happens to be the number we needed to give the octet. And we used up 6 electrons. And so that's 0. So if we didn't have 6 electrons left over, we would only have, like, let's say if we only have 4 left over, then we could only put 2 lone pairs. But since we have 6 left over, we were able to put 6. And then oxygen here has has an octet. And so everyone's happy with an octet, and so this is a proper Lewis dot structure. However, you might be thinking, well, what about bonding patterns? Bonding patterns, oxygen wants to have 2 bonds, right, and 2 lone pairs. So at this also, the bonding pattern of chlorine, we have that bonding pattern. So chlorine's bonding pattern is 3 lone pairs and 1 bonding pair, or one bond or bonding pair. So chlorine has its bonding pattern. Oxygen doesn't really have its bonding pattern. However, there's no way for oxygen to bond with chlorine because chlorine only forms 1 bond. Chlorine's not going to have a double bond here. So that's not really what happens with chlorine. So chlorine only ever has a single bond. It never has a double bond. And so you're stuck with this Lewis dot structure. And so in this case, since it's a negative, we've got our structure, and then it's got a negative charge on it. So we have to remember that we need the square brackets with the charge on the outside. So if you don't have the square brackets and the negative charge on the outside, then you don't have a complete Lewis dot structure for your negative ion. Your positive ions before, so for ammonium, we didn't need the square brackets because we don't draw square brackets with positive ions. It's just not it's not for positive ion. But for negative ions, you should have your square brackets around your Lewis dot structure with the negative sign. Then now you have a complete Lewis dot structure for your negative polyatomic ion. Okay, great. So let's stop there. In the next video, I'll go over a couple more examples, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining me, and if you enjoyed this video, please share this video with others. Hit the notification bell to be notified. Like this video, hit the like, subscribe button, subscribe to the channel, and make a comment in the comment section, and let me know what you think, and if there's anything you want me to cover or any questions you want me to answer. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.